We are excited to have Robert Kiyosaki. Most of you guys know him as the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of the best business books of all time. Robert, great to see you.
Well, it's great to see you. We're talking just before the show started. I'm in Warren Buffett's room.
You are?
Hopefully the vibes will rub off on me. I'm in South Carolina on a private island called Bray's Island.
Let's so obviously we're going to talk about, what's your crystal ball for 2024? I know you study a lot, but at any given time you've got 10 to 20 books you're reading, and you're constantly on the internet looking and watching and studying. And what's your crystal ball for 2024?
Well, a lot depends, as you know, Kenny, how old you are today. Because if you're my generation, I'm a lot older than Kenny. The baby boom generation has to watch out, because I think the S&P is going to crash. And, they called it the Magnificent Seven, Bitcoin, all the other, I don't play stock market, so it's about to go. So the boomer generation's in serious trouble. And that the median generation, they have to worry about the boomers retiring. Mommy and daddy are going to move in with you. And then there's the kids, your kids. So the future is really, really right now, in my opinion, divided upon age, because we're such unstable times right now. And we're just talking again before the show started. The problem is our money, and our money is fake money today. So if I was a younger generation person right now, I would be giving all my money to Kenny. Not really, but I would. Right now, what you're going to need is income. Because AI, artificial intelligence, is going to wipe out thousands of jobs, millions of jobs. And so the idea of, job security is a myth. Retirement security is a myth. And what do you do with kids and older guys, boomers moving in on you? So that's why it really depends upon your age and your bracket and all that stuff right now.
If you look at the median income for 2021, it took 31% of your money for housing. That was the number. In 2023, it was 41%. So it went up 10% in 2 years. So obviously, that's why I think one of the things for 2024 is going to certainly, we're starting to see little pieces of it, is going to be affordability.
Right.
For that very reason, I think people look at it as, let's say, a greedy landlord or whatever, but what they don't realize is that the money that actually is in their bank account is worth less than it was 2 or 3 years ago because of inflation. Robert, where do you see the dollar going? Because, when we're sitting, we had Brett Johnson on recently, and, he has, the milkshake theory, right? Which is essentially, we have he described it as a swimming pool. There's money coming in through into the pool, filling the pool, but there's a drain. And that the other countries, because they use dollars, they don't have the drain. So as we start filling our pool, it spills over to their pools and creates inflation across the world. Yet the dollar keeps pouring back into the U.S. because we seem to be the most stable currency. What do you see for 2024?
Well, Ken, we've known each other about 25 years now.
Yeah.
I see this too. It's not rocket science. I don't want anything they can print. If they can print it, I don't want stocks. They can print it. I don't want bonds because they can print it. I want gold, silver, Bitcoin, and income-producing real estate financed with debt. It's been my formula since we met here.
In this episode, the Fed is referenced quite a bit. Because of this, we wanted to give you a breakdown of how the Fed really was created and why it had some questionable practices. It's called Key Points About the Federal Reserve You Didn't Learn in School. In order to download this guide, which will help you follow along with the episode, please go to kenmcrory.com/Fed history.
I think bonds are the biggest danger right now because, as you know, Kenny, for years, these financial planners, they keep saying 60-40, 60-40. 60% stocks, 40% bonds. It was safe. Don't worry, until the market crashed, don't worry, the Fed's got your back. The Fed would jump in and save them. Well, the next crash in 2024, my prediction is they can't save them. This one is going to go down, and that's what I'm saying. What the future lies, it depends upon how old you are right now. If you're a baby boomer like me, I'm looking at a lot of my peers, my old guy friends, and I don't know if they'll be here in 5 years, if you know what I mean. And then you're younger, but you have your kids coming up. What are they going to do when AI takes their jobs away? I mean, so we look at everything is not intergenerational, but it all comes back to money. And we teach nothing about money at schools.
I don't know if you saw this, Robert, but basically this is a new legislation that proposes to take Wall Street out of the housing market. So it just came out now. As you know, it's happening again. Because there's a couple markets where over 50% of the transactions was Wall Street. In other words, in the single family market. So they're saying Wall Street's competing against Main Street. It's one of the hottest topics happening right now. So it's just different words, but exact same things, right?
Yep. And, when you talk to most realtors, I mean, they're good people. Financial planners are good people. And so the question is, who do you get your financial advice from? So when I look into the future, I would say each and every one of us needs to look into the future. Who are we taking financial advice from? The Fed, a real estate agent, a financial planner? You got to be kidding me. I'll say it again. Anything you can print, I don't want.
I would say it's funny because our friend's son just started out in financial planning and he's like 26, right? And he's talking about how he's getting clients and everything else. And I love the kid's spirit, honestly, but all I could think is like, who would hire this 26-year-old that goes out and is just trying to figure out how life and how to pay rent and pay his bills to actually plan their financial future?
Yeah. And so Kenny, you asked me, what do I see? The S&P 500 is a benchmark for a lot of things. And so is the bond market. And both of them are going to crash. The S&P 500 is a magnificent 7, which is what Amazon, Apple, and those guys, they're all going down. They'll be a good buy if you like to buy it at the bottom of it. But guys my age who are in their 70s and 80s, they can't afford that crash. So that's a big thing. Another thing for a young person, cash flow coming in, that's why what you teach, Kenny, with real estate, you want alternative sources of income, not dependent upon a job or the bond market or the dividend market. Our banks are in serious trouble, as you know, Kenny. I mean, commercial real estate, especially office buildings, they're in serious, serious trouble. It's going to take down a lot of banks, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize, and I fell into this as well. When you get out of college, I put my money with a wealth manager, a financial planner, and I remember, it not really moving very much because of all the fees. I didn't quite understand it, right? I didn't even know really how it was invested. And that's the system that you're in. And you actually have to step outside of the system and say, is there a better way other than just to let your employer invest your money for you, do the match? There has to be a way to have other sources of cash, like that. When Danielle and I met, she was already buying rental houses and already had cash flow outside of the system, but she was inside the system as a teacher and realized, she wasn't going to make it on 3% wage growth per year, all controlled by the school system, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm afraid, again, how old are you right now? When Ken and I met, my first objective when I came out of the Marine Corps was passive income. I wanted to get as much passive income as possible. I worked for Xerox. I took real estate courses. I was buying little pieces of property, winning some, losing some, learning how to develop cash flow. But the most important thing I learned was how to use debt. And every financial planner will tell you, get out of debt. And Kenny, we're in debt up to our eyeballs.
Yeah.
So everything we do, they tell us not to do.
Yeah, people don't realize that, if you are stepping back from it all and you're observing, when you get into debt, you're borrowing money that's not yours. and you're fixing it at 3-4%, you're actually beating inflation. You're actually using other people's money to get rich as the economy inflates.
Well, what I do is I make money, I give it to Kenny. Kenny gives it back to me. I take that money and then I buy gold, silver, and Bitcoin. I mean, it's not rocket science. You know what I mean? And I don't keep, Kenny are laughing. I need to say this, the gold and silver are not at my house.
Right. Any other final words on 2024? What can people do next year, or what can people do this year to prepare themselves for what might come?
Well, again, it depends on your age and your financial situation, but obviously your education is important, but your age is going to be a biggest factor in the next few years. Like I look at my family. I mean, how many of them have money? So that will they move in with me? Do you know what I mean? Those are questions that are real important questions. What happens if your kids can't get a job because AI wipes everything out? I'm not saying it's going to. I just don't know with AI right now. And then you have the threat of world war right now with Israel and Ukraine. So that's why 2024 is an interesting year. But I would stay away from anything you can print. And that's why I like gold, silver, Bitcoin. And I like debt, income-producing real estate, period. Very simple. Nothing's changed for me for 40, 50 years.
I want to touch on something that you had said earlier. You said that you don't think that they're going to bail out the bond market. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, because it's too big. The biggest market in the world is the bond market. That's kind of what Brent Johnson's talking about and all this. The dollar is very, very strong, but the dollar is debt. If you understand that the only way a dollar exists is it comes from debt, and those are called bonds. So this whole system, ever since the Fed took over in 1913, has been debt. And then they say get out of debt, whereas Kenny and I go up and say, oh, let's borrow this stuff, So Kenny and I act more like the Fed than most financial planners. Because if we need money, we borrow it. That's what the Fed does. Unfortunately, a lot of these guys put it into REITs, real estate investment trusts and all that. And those are those big office buildings and warehouses and shopping centers that are collapsing because technology is taking them out. I mean, who was going to an office today when you can sit at home and do what we're doing? Why would somebody go to a shopping center when Amazon will ship it to you that day? So there's so many changes, and that's why I mentioned AI, especially for the younger people, because the plan on job security. Daniil, I was in Dallas about 6 months ago checking out this company that's using AI to teach kids. AI can do a better job than a teacher can. And think about that, and then you go, now, am I going to plan for job security as a school teacher working for the government with a 401k? I would question all of that. And if you're my age right now, in my 70s, will my 401k survive? Because I think 2024, the S&P is going to collapse with the bond market. That's the worst case scenario. I hope it doesn't happen. But the S&P is in serious trouble because the bond market's in serious trouble, which means real estate's in serious trouble. So it's one big daisy chain, as they say.
Now, you even think on an election year they won't try to prop it up?
Oh, they will. Don't get me wrong. They will. It doesn't solve the problem, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So,
study.
Well, we've already seen it. We already saw a couple banks go down this year, or last year. And I think, if you look at any kind of a banking crisis, it always starts with a couple.
Andy Schekman's always talking about the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And they don't like the idea that we weaponize the dollar. They took Russia off the SWIFT system, they confiscated our wealth. America's a bully because of the dollar. So a lot of smaller countries want to stop us from they want to take down the dollar. That's why this whole conversation says it's about money. And the reason we have problems is, what's the biggest problem between the rich and the poor? Money, or the lack of it.
Robert, thank you, my man. I appreciate it. I'll see you, in a week?
Yeah, a few days. It's exciting. It's really exciting times, and you can get ahead really far and fast. But yeah, I think I would suggest not doing things don't do what your mother and father told you to do. Probably the best advice. I didn't listen to my mom and dad. I'm glad I didn't.
I think the key is just question everything.
Yes.
like that's the key. Like Danielle started doing that with health and the medical system, and what she's discovered is remarkable. Obviously we kind of focus on the financial system.
So there's more opportunity coming, but do you have the skill set to do it? That's the question.
Yep.
That is the question. Do you have the skill set to navigate all this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And who are your teachers?
Who are your teachers?
Yeah.